At first glance, Shelley seemed like a good enough girl. Her role in our company was an entry-level thing. She had that childish nervousness, where you could tell she sees us all as adults, superiors, people with insights that remain hidden to her. She was reluctant and insecure. That much is to be expected. We've all been there. Shaky voice the first time we negotiated salaries. Acting over-grateful, over-enthusiastic. Feeling over-panicked about bullshit. Yeah, I've been there too, sort of. But I got out of it fast. Incompetence, though. That's the real problem. With some people, you can't say if they're just that unlucky or that incompetent. Incompetence is a vortex. When the label sticks onto you, every move you make is seen through that lens. And Shelley thought that's what was happening to her. That it was unfair. Our boss was a dickhead. He wrote half-illiterate emails, was almost stubbornly hard to understand, as if he wanted people to feel perpetually confused, until you realize he just wanted to preserve the right to blame others if things go wrong. And he got into blaming rants whenever there was an issue or someone made a mistake. We've all been there. And I usually moved on quite easily or let him have it right back, then talk shit about him to a colleague over drinks. For fuck's sake, he was our boss, not a dictator. But poor, insecure little Shelley got pretty traumatized when he let her have it for the first few times. Sometimes she felt just awful because he was right, and she did wrong. Other times she was broken by the injustice because she just didn't understand what he wanted of her. He wasn't clear. She was just trying to do what he said. Use your fucking head, Shelley, he'd interrupt. Of course, when she attempted to take any small initiative on the verge of panic, it would go unnoticed or it would go wrong and he'd yell again. Panic doesn't really help a nervous and inexperienced person do better. And Shelley's panic was growing more and more every day. Why didn't she just get another job? Who knows? Maybe she needed the money. Maybe it was hard getting through that door, and a few month-long work experience with a pissed ex-boss doesn't look good on an unimpressive resume. Or maybe she just didn't have it in her to even initiate that topic with him. The problem was that soon it wasn't just him who had an issue with Shelley. While the rest of us there mostly commiserated with each other's feelings for him and did our job the rest of the time, she never quite fit in with us. For one, we were all at least semi-useful to each other. We knew how to do our part. She was unsure about hers, and no one had the patience to teach her. Laura, the girl who interacted with her most often due to her position, always had an aversion. She had no patience for this girl who walked around asking stupid questions, hoping for validation and approval. Plus, Shelley did make mistakes, and correcting them was annoying. So, she started lashing out at Shelley, making comments about her to the rest of us. Whether she was being fair or not, none of us cared that much, and it quickly caught on. Now, everyone noticed everything that was wrong with Shelley. Eye-rolling and snickering were common when she did or said something dumb. Even if as an isolated incident, it was a fair mistake. We all made mistakes, sure, but our image was solid. We weren't labeled. We could say, "Oh, fuck," and move on. But she couldn't. Quite literally, too. She always over-apologized or stupidly apologized. Like by using emojis when called out on the group chat. Fair enough. It was informal and others used emojis too, but when she did it, we could only see immaturity and stupidity radiating from it. I had a phase when I was in a pretty good mood. I handled some major projects well. Dickhead was talking about a promotion. Colleagues appreciated me. I could spend half a day on the internet and no one would notice shit because I was competent, comfortable. I knew my shit. My personal life was going great too. Me and my girlfriend Cynthia had a lot of fun. Going out was fun. Netflix in bed was fun. Hangovers were fun. I was happy. I normally didn't pay much attention to Shelley. I was polite enough with her, but didn't shy away from some ridicule at times. But when I saw her all nervous and alone, I took pity on her. Filled with energy and the idea that I had awesomeness to share, I gave her a little special attention one day. Chatted with her a bit. Showed some interest. She was so grateful for this attention, and she latched on to me. She started opening up a bit, asking me about some projects she was unsure of. It was all so easy. It just took some knack to understand our boss. I took some time with her and deciphered the request, gave her some pointers. She looked at me as if I were Jesus. Later, she asked me if I could take a look at her work. It took me just a few minutes to validate her, compliment her, point her at some small error, and give a little suggestion to make it even better. And she was done. She thanked me profusely as if I saved her from a death sentence. Apparently, it all went well, and she didn't get yelled at. I truly enjoyed feeling like such a good person. For a while, I dug the whole thing, her admiration and respect, playing a mentor. I even defended her in front of others. I said she's just inexperienced and anxious. Laura said I'd regret getting involved soon enough. She was right. As work life went on, new projects came along. Dickhead was in a shit mood and my happiness started wearing out. I started feeling overwhelmed, irritable. Cynthia started taking too much of my time when I didn't work. It seemed I had little time to focus on anything else between the two, and I was in a shittier mood. Nothing major, just regular ups and downs. Moods that come and go. Nothing was horribly different than the phase before. It just didn't feel as good, and my energy and attention span felt tested. Suddenly, Shelley's little interruptions didn't give me a feel-good ego kick anymore. They were just bothersome. She became a burden. She now saw me as her knight who would protect her against dickhead and mean coworkers. And she didn't dare to fart without checking with me first. It was always, could you just take a look at this? Or, hey, does this look fine? Or, Richard asked me to do blah blah, what does he mean? First, I got colder. I ignored her more often or replied much later with, sorry, no idea, check with him, or kind of busy, I'm sure it's fine. Or, ask Laura, that's her department. I stopped encouraging and validating her victim complex. Yeah, Richard is a pain. Laura has a bad temper. Whatever. In the end, it's still your job. You're an adult. Fucking handle it. I came to agree with everyone. She was just not competent. I shared my analysis based on my first-hand experience. As much as she seemed like an abused little puppy, she's a professional victim. The narrative in her head that probably makes her so prone to mistakes is that the world is conspiring against her. I mean, shit, I started agreeing with Richard's point of view more than with hers most of the time. And trust me, there wasn't a situation where I didn't consider him to be a moron. But she's not learning. She's not handling herself. As soon as she got someone to listen, it was just complaint after complaint. Yeah, she gets shit for a small grammar error or a missed attachment, but she's also oblivious about her level and about the amount of responsibility others handle. It was her job to focus on small shit and do the nonsense that should make our lives easier. She'd take about an hour to even draft an email because she's so paranoid. The rest of us didn't have time for that. She had this misconception that everyone else was relaxed, that everything fell on her, that everything was unfair. She just didn't get it. Although she had no self-confidence, in her victimhood she seemingly found the way to be the martyr, and that made her more arrogant than any of us. It made her distasteful to me. I went from losing interest to seeing her as a nuisance I had an urge to put down. I guess because she chose to be down and useless. Finally, I snapped at her for sending me a message when I was relaxing at home on my day off. I was already telling her more and more aggressively to figure things out herself. I said, "Shelley, stop asking me inane questions. Do your job or look for something else. I'm not your tutor." She profusely apologized, using some dumb emojis. I didn't bother to reply and appease her. After that, I made a point I was not available for conversations with her. And she got the message. Now she was fully alone. Mistakes continued and got progressively worse, while all of our moods were pretty intense due to the workload. The more people snapped at her, the more people felt comfortable snapping at her. Fuck, it felt good to snap at her. We snapped at each other too, but there was always a line, not so much with her. At one point she tried to stand her ground. I'm sure she felt she's a victim of bullying who will now stand up for herself. Except like everything she did, it completely missed the mark. The moment she gave one of us the attitude was when people went from talking down to her to downright animosity. People called her a moron practically to her face and within her earshot. She gave up. Now she was just sullen, gray in the face, looking physically sick. The air around her was heavy and poisonous. Then she started missing work. Whenever something went on where she knew she needed to coordinate a lot of things with a chance of something not running smoothly, she'd stay at home. Richard was already talking about her as a goner. She was now just a running joke. In fact, I'd even say it bonded us all through the stressful work period. When things went wrong and someone pointed at her, we all sympathized, even if it was Richard saying it. Shelley's days were numbered. Thinking of it now, I'm sure she could feel she entered a state of limbo. No one even asked her to do things. In fact, sometimes one of us would ask for something she'd normally do, and another person would helpfully volunteer, or we'd just politely ask someone else right past her. She was practically ignored all the time. At best, Richard would send her to get coffee or order us lunch. There was something morbid about that time, although I have to admit her pain gave me some kind of satisfaction I find hard to explain. I guess I just didn't like her. Beyond that, I didn't want her associated with me. There was this divide between people like us and people like her. And in that, she lost her humanity to me. Who she was wrong. She was a leech. She was an irritant, and she became even physically ugly. Although if you ask me at the start, I'd say she was a solid 7. Now she just seemed bloated and sickly, and her skin got really bad. But the morbid part I mentioned. It was like having a dead woman walking. She was a corpse. She didn't speak. She tried to make herself invisible, but also imposed on us with her presence. You'd think she would have had the dignity or the decency to just end the misery and quit. But she would still show up where she wasn't wanted, and we'd watch with morbid fascination. Richard started interviewing replacements. And then, one day before work, we got a message from Richard to stay home for the day. Apparently, that night when everyone left, Shelley managed to stay in the building and jumped down 6 floors, falling right in the middle of the lobby. She actually did it correctly and managed to die. I was almost impressed. Of course, there was a shock I felt at first. More accurately, surprise. Was I sad? She didn't really mean anything to me. I contemplated if I should feel guilty, but I didn't really. You don't kill yourself for this. There must be a big, huge context behind why she killed herself, and whatever my role was, it was marginal. Plus, what should I have done? Kept holding her hand and appeasing her? Even my coworkers showed some irritation after the first few generic "shit, I feel so bad for her" messages. In fact, Isn't it really sick to do it like that? To make your suicide your company's issue? Well, she wasn't right in the head. We all knew it. Wasn't this just the ultimate act of passive aggression, bordering on evil? I couldn't feel bad for such a person, but I did feel defensive at the same time. I felt that her act pointed the blame at us, including me. And even though I disagreed, I couldn't shake off the discomfort that she found me responsible for what she did. But then it started. Like a virus that spread from her to us, we all started making mistakes. Not just the type of mistakes everybody makes, but bigger, stupider, more and more frequent mistakes. Some were really embarrassing. Franz showed us his Reddit profile while screen sharing during Zoom. I accidentally copy-pasted a morbid curiosity internet search to an email subject line, and I can't for the life of me explain how. Mistakes got bigger. Offensive typos. Mentioning the wrong company name. Sloppiness, forgetfulness during the important presentations. Richard was more and more furious. We were annoyed at each other and downright paranoid of getting called out. The more worried we were about people noticing our mistakes, the more we were on defense looking out for those of others. We never actually talked about it to each other, because talking about it would be a type of admission of incompetence. But I'm sure we all felt that something was wrong about all this. That something was being done to us. You can say that it's easier to think you're cursed than admit your own mistakes. And on one level, I could rationalize what was happening in many ways, but it also felt completely outside of my control. There was a part of me that toyed with the idea that she cursed me, or even worse, that her presence was still there, doing it. This is why, of course, I'd never say it out loud or think it for real. Why we never talked about this suspicion and instead just got more and more frustrated with others around us. Richard started firing people. He was a wreck. I got into an argument with him and got fired too. I was shocked. I had fights with Richard before, but I always knew he'd never fire me. I was way too valuable. Now though, he informed me that for the last few months my work has not been up to standard, that I've been informed about this several times and failed to improve, and that the company suffered for it. Man, fuck that job. I was pissed. It was actually the most literate email I'd ever seen him write. Fine, I thought. I'll regroup and I'll go somewhere else. It's a good thing I'm not working for that imbecile anymore. Plus, maybe in a new place, the curse of Shelley's incompetence would leave me. Cynthia's reaction kind of irked me, though. Instead of being supportive, she was asking me about my financial plans. She'd been very naggy lately, and the more stress I had at work, the more she liked to point out my failings. Or absent-mindedness around the apartment. All trivial nonsense, only relevant to a bored mind. I didn't even tell her that I got fired. I told her we all got let go because the business is going bad. But I could see some doubt in the way she looked at me. Like she's doubting me and my abilities. Her resentment made me resent her. Though she insisted, she suggested no such thing. She wasn't unsupportive. "What did I say?" she asked. "It's not what you said, the look on your face and shit you didn't say that says it all," I replied. Perhaps a tad bit dramatically in retrospect. She called me insane, and I broke something on my way out, and I could hear her curse in the bedroom. It was on purpose, I shouted while slamming the door. We eventually made up, but it wasn't the same. I wasn't the same. It took me a while, 5 months actually, to find another job worth doing, and the bit of freelancing I did in between wasn't always as good as promised. I got paid only 50% of what I was supposed to for my last project because I didn't do it so well and I had too many mistakes. And no one was really rehiring me. I blamed working from home in this fucked up atmosphere with that Karen in the other room who'd roll her eyes whenever she passed me by, as if my presence in the apartment was a sign of my fatal failure. But that little part of me had an entirely different idea about what was going on, and it certainly didn't serve to appease me about my failures. Instead, it was growing anxiety pressed on my chest. I wished it was my fault. I wished it was in my control, but not only did I know that it wasn't, that I didn't know how to change it, I also knew that no one would take my fears seriously. Ha, they'd say, a girl cursed you. She's an evil ghost that causes bad grammar. No, my friend, you're just trying to avoid taking responsibility for your own actions. You don't need an exorcist, you need a therapist. I had some savings. Mom sent me some money, but Cynthia's patience was wearing thin. Good to know, I thought, while we fought more and more. When I finally got a job and got fired in the first week because of a fuck-up, she dumped me. Like, it wasn't about that. It was about me being different. Fuck off. The way I saw it is when things start breaking down, everything follows. Of course I was fucking up. I got into my head that I'm cursed with bad luck, and now I couldn't shake the insecurity and paranoia that things would go wrong, which of course makes things go wrong. I lost my natural touch. Yes, I tried a therapist also, but I wasn't crazy about it. Soon enough, I could tell he seemed annoyed with me, and when I said that much, he told me I didn't say anything. I told him I saw him roll his eyes. He told me to lower my voice in a condescendingly calm tone. And I flipped. He asked me to leave, and I'm not doing that shit again. One day I ran into Richard. He looked disheveled. I've never seen him not wearing a suit before. Now he wore flip-flops. He had a neck beard and just generally looked like shit. Gained some weight, too. We didn't really talk much. He was fired by the board of directors. Said that it was for the best and that he's working on his mental health now. He was kind of hostile and reeked of alcohol, so I didn't push. I looked up Laura. I found out that she had attempted suicide and was now in a coma. Her sister left this message on her Facebook. I'm fucking serious, this one shocked me. I imagined this person I knew lying in a coma and felt sick to my stomach. To be fair, she wasn't a friend or someone I was that interested in, aside from work. She was fun to flirt with at times, but not my type. But her humanity suddenly felt as real as mine, and her being in a coma felt like an attack on me. I can't explain it. Was it empathy? Was it fear? I don't know, but I was paralyzed. I tried getting in touch with other ex-coworkers, but found surprisingly little. One left the country, and all trace of him seems lost. The other was not responsive and seemed to have deleted all accounts. Much later, I learned he butchered his girlfriend and her daughter around that time, after an argument, and then calmly waited to be arrested. My life continues. I got another job eventually after many painful, discouraging interviews and eating a lot of shit to get a chance with this employment gap. I'm still not quite there. I'm so scared I'll fuck this one up. I'm staying, working until 10 p.m. every day, just double-checking everything. It's not like I have much of a life outside of work anyway, or enough money to buy one. Even so, I'm not highly regarded, and mistakes still manage to find their way into my work. Stupid errors I can't explain or understand. I notice my new coworkers rolling their eyes at me sometimes, and it takes all that I have to stop myself from reacting and losing another job. Who the fuck do they think I am? Well, I know the answer to that question. I can't trust myself or my judgment, which causes me to feel constant fear. Saturday nights are the worst. The idea of a whole new week opening up in front of me, with new demands and tasks I have to go through. So many mistakes I'll fail to avoid. It makes me want to stay in bed forever. It's more panic-inducing than anything I've experienced in my life. No horror movie can match the terror of Monday morning. The worst thing about all of it is that it's so unfair, and everyone who looks down on me for it is taking part in this injustice. I am being made into something I'm not, and they're all reinforcing that wrong image. And for that, I hate them all. Every day I dream and fantasize about just killing every motherfucker in my workplace. All these idiots who think they're better than me. And maybe Cynthia, and then myself. I stop, and with less and less conviction tell myself it's just a phase. There's no curse, no ghost. I'm not doomed. It'll pass and I'll be myself again. Just how long can a phase last? Because I'm running out of patience, and another, more and more convincing part of me wonders, if there is a curse that worked like a virus, could I not spread it onto them just like she did it with me? So that at least they all know what it's like. And that it was never my fault.